All right, welcome to Tantra. So Tantra in Sanskrit is usually known as or translated as to weave. So you're weaving all parts of life together. But the literal translation of tan means to expand, and tra means an instrument. So it's literally a translation of an instrument for expansion. Um, and the reason I say tan instead of tan, because it is Sanskrit. And so we're trying to use the magic of the words, the magic of the language. I can't roll my R's very well, so my ta doesn't come out too much. But when you're even saying the word tantra, that is invoking a certain energy. So words have power, right? We're creating spells, and how we say our words also have power. So it's a little bit about the etymology. I think that's what it's called, about the word. And then my first point here is the breath. So everything, if you learn Tantra from many different teachers or many different paths, you will often hear people come back to the breath or start with the breath. So prana is sometimes known as breath. It means life force, and our breath is literally our life. You can go a long time without food. You can go some time without water, but you can really only go a few minutes without breath or air. So this is really like the essence of life. So we work a lot with breath work. We work a lot with breath. And even in yoga class, like it's always starting with the breath. Notice your breath, move with your breath. What is your breath doing? Without breath, we do not have life. That's really quite magical to remember and come back to. And so I have here, as a practitioner, sometimes I prescribe breathing patterns to people depending on what they need. We've done this in class a few times last week, the square breathing pattern. So you inhale on the square, you hold, you exhale, you hold. We've been doing it in an even way, like so in that square way. But there are, depending on what you're working with, you can maybe inhale longer than the other three. You can hold longer than the other three. You can skip the hold altogether, depending on what you're going through. So typically, the inhale is to increase energy. Retention of the inhale is building vitality and alertness. Exhaling is increasing relaxation, and holding the retention on the exhale is finding that calm and that oneness. So I have an example here. If you desire calm and stress reduction, you're going to increase the length of the exhale. So you'll maybe breathe in for 4 counts and exhale for 8 counts, something like that. If you desire more alertness, it would be the other way around. Or I say if you're recovering from depression, so you would inhale for longer, maybe hold the retention, and exhale for a short amount of time. Pop quiz. Who knows what we're doing on the Uddiyana breathing?
Retention of the exhale.
Yeah. And that is basically sacred sexuality practice for men to learn retention of the ejaculation. So if you were to practice that and hold the retention on the inhale, you would probably ejaculate. That's just what the energy is doing. So you hold the retention on the exhale, and that creates that groundingness too. So yeah, lovely. So the next thing I have here is awareness. One of the pleasures of Tantra is to become aware of the physical body. So I have here, one often embarks on the spiritual path to find enlightenment. And sometimes that means disengaging from the physical body. You know, you see monks in meditation and like, are they there? Are they not there? I don't know. And so the practice of Tantra sometimes is to embody enlightenment, being so in your body that your body itself is that temple of transformation. So I have a few practices here to work with that. You can clear the physical body with shaking. So we do that often. You can play with physical touch with yourself or with another to experience, you know, firm touch. So you can just like squeeze yourself, or you can play with soft, subtle touch and just become more sensitive to different types of touch. You can even play with, you know, moving the hand off of the body and seeing if you can notice that. Another exercise would be to sit back to back with someone and feel their breath. So whether you inhale together or if you inhale and exhale at different times. I also say here that you can explore being back to back. You can have your eyes closed too, and you can move your arms and see if you can move in unison without looking at them. So you're really practicing your senses. You're opening up your senses. You can also do the breath to breath, the back to back breath thing, but not being touching. So you could be a little bit further apart and see how that feels. So then I say here, we work with Tantra to feel the subtlety of every movement, every moment. Can we peel back the layers of awareness to find more subtleties? So we start with the gross physical body and move to the energetic and spiritual bodies. And you should all be familiar with this now, or maybe I haven't repeated it too much, but as we talk about the tattvas and the koshas, so when we start with that gross physical body, the Anandamaya kosha, and we move to the breath body, or sorry, I'm going the wrong way, the big body, Anamaya kosha, and then we move to the breath body, and then we move to the mental, the wisdom, and finally the most subtle, the bliss. So we can work with yoga and other practices to find these subtleties and to work with them, and then eventually just have them in everyday life, every moment, every waking experience. And then here I have the chakras. So your chakras are the energetic centers in the body that correspond to specific actions, energies, and needs. A chakra in Sanskrit translates to wheel. So they're literal wheels or spheres of light placed within and without the body. So we typically only talk about 7 chakras, the main 7 in the spine, but you have chakras in your hands, you have them in your legs, you have them in your feet, and we have them below and above the body too. So there are far more than just 7, but we talk mainly about the 7 in the spine. So I found this diagram on the internet. I do not own it, but it has a lot of information about these chakras. So I speak a little bit to them in class, but not a heck of a lot. So we always start with the base, the root chakra, Muladhara. This deals with career, money, sense of belonging. It also deals with a sense of safety, security, stability, a groundedness, sense of home. Basically, a lot of what we're dealing with in this time right now. So on the right-hand side, if you want to read on your own, maybe later, you can go into a little bit more about how that would look. And then we have our sacral chakra and the Svadhisthana, sexuality. Well, this is a bit different than mine, but it deals with sexuality, emotions, and creativity. So those 3 aspects are connected in the sacral chakra here. And if one is blocked, typically another one is blocked. So the sacral chakra governs a lot of how we feel in the world. And a healthy sacral chakra will be connected to a healthy throat chakra, and you can express your creativity, express your emotions, express your sexuality in a healthy way. So that's a fun connection between the sacral chakra and the throat chakra. And also, like, if you have powerful orgasms, if you vocalize, sometimes that can really increase the energy or the vibration. Sometimes not. Sometimes if you're like super silent, that can connect more with the crown chakra, that sort of thing. But that's just a side note. And then we have our solar plexus chakra, Manipura. So this is your personal power, your strength. This says your ability to channel. I'm not too sure what that means, but it's really about finding a healthy ego. Your intellect is also carried here in the solar plexus chakra. And in Tantra, in my training, we talked a lot about the solar plexus complex. So in our society now, there's a lot of imbalance in the solar plexus. I find this in most of my clients. The first step is to basically soothe and calm the ego, to really thank it for being like, we talked about this in the witch circle, but our ego helps us survive and helps us live, and it helps us give us a sense of self. And so there is a healthy amount of ego. We don't want to just all together, because we don't really exist. But we want a healthy amount of ego, and we want to really like, what am I trying to say? I'm visualizing it. Like, pet the ego, just make it like, thank you for helping me be alive. Thank you for helping me have a strong sense of self. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, let's try not to get, too aggressive or too attached to any ideas or anything like that, a healthy amount of ego. So that's a really big one that I find that comes up a lot in my work. And we call it the solar plexus chakra because it's a trickster. It becomes like kind of a joker, and then it'll throw the heart chakra off, but in slightly different ways than is imbalanced to the heart chakra. It'll throw the sacral chakra off, it'll throw the root chakra off, and it's all these like egotistical ways of being out of alignment. So it can be tricky because you think you're out of alignment in one of your other chakras, but really it's your ego playing tricks on you. And the solar plexus. So this is just a big one that I like to work with everyone, basically, like just personal power too, self-esteem, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, I love you, I love you, I love you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So then we come up to the heart chakra, the anahata. This has to do with love, relationships, and our attachments. This can be attachments to people, but it can also be attachments to ideas, concepts, groups, ideologies. So this is a really interesting one. Because sometimes people have attachments to, political parties and stuff like that, and that's actually a heart chakra issue. It could be a little bit of a trickster too with the ego and the solar plexus, so that's where that can come out. But yeah, so the heart chakra is really about, compassion, love, finding that acceptance within yourself and acceptance with everyone. Like I say sometimes in class, our hands are the direct extension of that heart chakra. The heart chakra is the midpoint of the energetic, these chakras, the energetic system, and the hands are beautiful givers and receivers of the heart. Yeah, so that's the heart chakra. And then we go up to the throat chakra, the Vishuddha. This is about a healthy self-expression, speaking your truth. It's also purity. So finding that purity, truth. It's also about hearing things and hearing things clearly. So an imbalanced throat chakra might allow you to hear things with your own bent, if that makes sense. So someone might be saying something, but you'll translate it while you hear it to how you want to hear it in an unhealthy way. So having a clear throat chakra can help us communicate and receive communication in a healthy way. And like I said, it's connected to the sacral chakra, and that it allows us to express our creativity, our sexuality, and our emotions in a clear way as well. So those two are quite linked. Then we come up to the third eye, the Agna chakra. And this is our intuition, being able to see things or sense things without physically seeing them, right? So we all have psychic abilities. I truly believe every human is born with psychic abilities. And typically we just get closed off from that. So the third eye is that sense of intuition, so there's many different types of psychic abilities too. There is the sort of one that's most known about, which is clairvoyance, being able to see things. But then there's also clairaudience, being able to hear things. There's clairsentience, which is being able to feel things. What are the other two? There's clairaudio, oh my gosh, this shouldn't be this hard. There's only 5. See, hear, feel, speak. No, maybe. Anyway, my brain is blanking, but do you know that there's many different types of psychic abilities, and that they're all okay. They're all good. And then we come up to the crown chakra, the Sahasrara, the connection to the divine. So the crown chakra, like I led in our meditation this morning, it sits a little bit above the head, and it's usually seen as the 1,000-petal lotus. It connects us to everything else. But then if you go into other systems of the chakra system, that's only the 7th one. So then there's other chakras that are above it that connect even further into the spiritual and psychosomatic realms or metaphysic realms. But that's really so once, basically the way the chakras work is that, you know, if the root chakra is off, it's really hard for any of the other ones to align. It's kind of like if you're building a building, right? If your foundation cracks and it falls, you know, all these other ones are going to suffer. And so the energy of the male, now we all have female and male energy in us, but a male dominant energy will flow from the root chakra up to the crown. And so in terms of connecting sexually, all a male energied sexuality needs to become active is to have that root chakra in balance. So stability, career, money, that needs to be balanced for healthy sexuality. Oftentimes, if I see clients who are struggling with sort of erectile dysfunction or performance issues or whatever, that sometimes has to do with their ideas of money or stability or something being out of balance there. Like they lost, you know, maybe they lost their home, or they're struggling to make ends meet, and they're feeling out of imbalance with their maybe feminine energied partner. And sometimes women too, like I say, we all have both. Sometimes women only need the root chakra to be able to connect sexually. So that can happen too. But typically a female energied sexuality starts at the crown. So She needs to feel connected. She needs to feel seen. She needs to feel heard. She needs to feel loved. She needs to feel empowered, and then she can connect sexually. So there's a lot of things that need to come in line here. Now, some men are more female sexually energied, and so they need all of these things before feeling sexually empowered. It goes, it doesn't matter like what gender you are. It just depends which sort of sexuality you connect with more. So but it's interesting to know. And also we do crave polarity to make that spark, right? So if you have a more male sexual energy, you're going to crave a female sexual energy to respond and spark with you, and vice versa. So if you have a partner and maybe they're in the same energy that you are, you might just feel like lots of love and lots of energy, but it might like fizzle out, or it might or maybe it's like the other way, or maybe you're both very like male dominant in your sexuality and it's super passionate, but then like nothing else really connects. So it's really interesting. And also, speaking about the chakras, I could go on about the chakras for like hours, because actually that is how I work with Tantra. I just made it one page, but um, the other cool thing you could do, this is like pro tip, if you're meeting someone new, if you're single and you're meeting someone new, one way to tell if it will be a healthy and viable relationship is that if you guys match in at least 4 of your chakras. Oh, I didn't write this down. This gets a little bit more complicated. So you want to match and be even on the root chakra, the solar plexus chakra, the throat chakra, and the crown chakra. But you want to have polarity, so you actually want your opinions and desires to be different in the sacral chakra, the heart chakra, and the third eye chakra. So hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I should have written that down because it gets a little convoluted, but you would want 4 of those to be in line for you guys to have a successful match. So say, let's an example, say your root chakra. So both of you desire saving money and a secure home. Okay, great, you meet on that one. Sacral chakra, maybe one of you is kinky and one of you is sensual. Okay, great, you have polarity, you can move on. Also, that's one of the erotic love languages, or not love language, erotic languages. There's 5 erotic languages. If you're interested, there's a quiz online by Gayama. And then, okay, solar plexus, you want to be the same here. So you have the same type of intellect or ego, understanding, same sense of self-worth and agreeableness. Heart chakra here, you'd want to have that polarity again. So one of you maybe is really idealistic and really connects with like wanting to help all of humanity, and maybe one of you is more like family oriented and rooted in the now. It's just the heart chakra is a little bit of a harder one to understand the polarity there, but that's a small example. Throat chakra. So communication styles, you want this one to line up. So if one person, you know, when you're communicating, needs to speak everything right away and get things off their chest and move on, whereas if the other person is, you know, more of like, oh, I need to think about this and we're going to talk about it in a day, that's a different communication style. You don't want that. You want to have someone with the same communication style. Oftentimes we don't find that, or that's what I see with people. We find polarity in this chakra, but for an ideal match, you would find someone with a similar communication style to you. That works well. Third eye chakra, you actually want polarity here. So if you're maybe more of a visual intuitive and they're a feeler intuitive, that's great. You want difference here. Crown chakra, that deals more with sort of spirituality, what your beliefs are in that realm. So if one person, you know, loves Tantra and believes in that, woo! And the other person sort of is way more into like Christianity or or some other form of devotion might be a little more of a struggle. So anyway, that's a quick rundown of how the chakras would align in a partnership, in a successful partnership. Now, like I said, the ideal is to have 4 in line. You're not going to have all 7 in line unless you're like amazingly matched with someone, but oftentimes it's just, go for what you can. Choose what's important to you. So before we move on, any questions about the chakras?
No, that was very good. A few months ago, I had no idea of like the chakras. I just knew I wanted to know, and I like a couple months ago, I set like an intention to kind of invite that into my being, and I'm getting there now. I'm pretty solid, and the visual aids are great, by the way.
I'm a very visual learner as well, so that's why I have so many pictures. Yeah. Okay. Well, then, if unless there's any other questions about chakras, I don't want to move on too quickly. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Thank you. All right, let's go on to the next point. Mangala. Okay, this is one of the teachings that my Tantra teacher gave to me. It was the morning and we just talked to a Mangala. Mangala is a Sanskrit word that basically relates or translates to it's all good. It's all good. Mangala, it's all good. So everything exists in this universe. Everything is. And in terms of working with Mangala, there's no need to place judgment. It all is, and it's all good. Speaking more to this, there's famine in the world, there's death in the world, there's murder in the world, there's chaos in the world, there's destruction. There's also birth, there's also joy, there's also ecstatic emotions, there's love. And that's what I mean by it all exists and everything is. We don't, in terms of that polarity, we don't really have one without the other. And that's why there's no need to judge it. It just is. And we just honor that it is. In Rasa Tantra, which is one type of Tantra, we work on the 7 main emotions. I don't have them written down here and I don't have my book. But we always aim to come back to center and to calm. So we actually don't seek bliss. We don't seek ecstasy. We seek peace. We seek the middle way. You can practice this. So if you're in a really strong state at any moment, say you're in a deep state of rage or anger, you can think of the opposite emotion, which would be joy or happiness, and think of something that brings you joy and happiness. And this is a hack to try and remind you that it all exists. Yes, you can be in anger, you can also be in joy at the same time. And then you find the middle. The same is true for when you're in joy and when you're in deep happiness and bliss. Remember about the times that you feel, maybe anger or depression. Know that those two polarities exist. The saying, this too shall pass, is not just for when things are uncomfortable. This too shall pass is when things are really blissful too. It all is. It's all good. And so that is the path of Tantra Rasa and coming back to the center. The other thing I didn't write here is about emotions and how emotions only last for about 20 seconds in your body. It is what you place your mind on and what value you give that emotion to if it lasts or not. So if you can feel the emotion, honor it, let it pass in your body, that's it, it passes, 20 seconds. If you then attach to the emotion and then you decide to make it a feeling of yours and you want to keep it well, then that's, know that that's a choice and that you're making that choice. It's often an unconscious choice, but if you can bring it to the conscious light, that is your choice. So it's really liberating to know emotions only last 20 seconds or whatever the number is. And then it does pass. So, and all emotions um, are tools for the body for awareness to notice where you're at or what the situation is, if it's what it's doing to you, right? So if you notice deep anger for that 20 seconds, like what just caused you that discomfort? Like, is there a safety issue in your body? Is someone, coming up against your boundaries or whatever it might be? So you can look deeper as opposed to just the surface level happening and reaction. So um, that's a little bit of a longer talk too. Non-dualism, I just have a little note here, is a key teaching of Tantra. There's no good and bad, is what I was saying. It all exists, it all is. There's no this or that, it's this and that, everything all at once. So even though I talk about the feminine and masculine, it's also just, it just all is. We, as humans, we're very dual. We see things very dualistic, but that is not truly the nature of nature. There's a million types of trees. There's a million types of, um, water particles. There's a million types of everything, and trying to see things in a less dualistic way is quite helpful to us. It's interesting. I was working with CBT earlier this year, and that's one of the that can be one of the issues, is having that this or that thinking, and it can cause a lot of harm in your own personal self and in relationships. So just offer that seed of non-dualism. Okay, my next note, something that was huge for me when I learned Tantra was learning how to say no and learning how to receive hearing no. And then also having a no be a greater tool to find a yes, your true yes. So it's important for us to be clear with ourselves about what we need and desire so that we can be clear with others and the universe. A practice here is to say no with another. So you can set up a time to maybe share a massage or a meal or something that feels comfortable for the two of you. And then one person would practice, saying, asking for a request. So say like, hey, would you be comfortable giving me a shoulder massage? And if the person being asked says no, you can say, okay, thank you for taking care of you. What would you be a yes to? Or you can ask another question. Would you be comfortable giving me a head massage? Would you be comfortable giving me a foot massage? Everyone has different boundaries. And so saying no doesn't mean it's the end of that interaction. It's just not that thing. And so it can simply lead to what else, okay, no, you don't want to do this, but what would you be comfortable doing? And I really, really love the practice of saying, thank you for taking care of you. That's a really healing part for me in terms of honoring that no, and also honoring the person, because it can be hard for a lot of us to say no. And allowing someone that like that opportunity to like have it be received as a good thing, I think is really healthy. So keep asking. If you're still in the practice, keep asking until you're both a resounding yes. You want to find what you're both a yes to. Maybe it's neither. Maybe you don't want to do massage at all and you just end up eye gazing or having a great conversation. Just find what you're both a yes to. And also with the practice, so this is something I don't always do. Oh, it's down here. Oh, maybe I didn't write it. Okay, that's okay. Something I do in dance, actually, in contact improv, is we practice saying no to something that feels good. So someone could offer you a neck massage and you're like, oh my God, I have so much tension. Yes, but practice saying no to something that would feel good to you, just so that you have that tool and that ability and that muscle to say no if that needs to arrive. Um, so that could be something you do too in this practice. Oh, no, I did write it here. Something you would like, yeah. And just feel that discomfort within yourself because it might arise. So just practice saying no. It's a great tool. Okay, any questions about that? No.
I love saying no.
Yeah. And like honestly, when you learn to practice it and people say no, you don't take it personally anymore because you can see it as like, all right, great, that's just not for you and that's not aligned with you and that's okay. I have no judgment or attachment around it. That's just, that's where you are. Perfect.
I actually got great practice with my cat because she's always like, meow. I'm like, no. So it's helped me with humans. When they're like, hey, I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
no. If my cat can't get it from me, you can't get it from me either.
That's great. It's so funny though, like if you notice that with people, right? Like parents who can't say no to their children, like they probably can't say no to a bunch of other things. It's just this, and then that's that energy leak, and yeah, boundaries, having knowing where you are, where others are, it's a good thing. So then I come down here to sex magic. I write here. Okay, let's start at the top. I'll go slowly so you don't read ahead. Let's be clear. Tantra allows for all things, sex included. However, Tantra is not synonymous to sex. The translation of tan and tra, if you remember, is not sex. It's a spiritual practice, and sometimes it even includes celibacy. Sex practices make up probably only about like 3% of what the whole theology of Tantra is. However, sexuality is a sacred and spiritual practice. If you think about it, you were created from sex. Sexuality is life force energy. Life is sexuality. So the two cannot be separated. In that way, Tantra is 100% about sex. So take that what you will. Getting into sex magic takes understanding of all the layers of the body and energy centers. So that's why we start with the breath, we start with the body, we start with the chakras and the higher self. And we combine all of these things and eventually find that moment of bliss or ecstasy or that becoming one with all. The orgasm is this kind of hack of enlightenment because for a moment you have that nothingness, or maybe a longer moment, because if you work with the practices, you can extend your orgasms and feel that length of time. I teach a form of meditative masturbation where you can learn and experience sex magic on your own. So I highly recommend starting with yourself. Our energetic bodies can become entangled with other people's energetic bodies, often unconsciously, unknowingly, and sexuality is the gateway to getting entangled with someone. There are ways to untangle, there are ways to cut cords and release ties. But often in my experience and my feeling is that once I have sex with someone, they're always energetically tied to me somehow forevermore. So again, take with that what you will. And to practice sex magic, you want to find an intention or an I am statement that you can remember at the moment of orgasm. Relax your body, focus on your breath, expand your pleasure throughout your body, not just in your genitals. So you want to bring the awareness to your heart, your third eye, hands, your feet, and enjoy your own touch. It's really about pleasure. It's not about the end goal. So I say oftentimes there's no need to even climax. You just simply enjoy the sensations in your body. One witchy life hack is to notice all 5 senses at the moment of orgasm. This really heightens and releases so much more. experience peace. So try not to find tension in your body. And if you forget your I am statement at the moment of orgasm, visualize a galaxy or the universe. I didn't write this here, but for those of you who are in my sex magic little 30-day thing, we don't want to visualize other people. We don't want to visualize any fantasy or porn or anything like that, because that brings in a different energy that I'm personally not inviting for this practice. So that's just a little side note. So some advanced Tantra practices are soul gazing. That's when you look in someone's eye, you don't speak for, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, whatever it is. This can often be found at like Tantra 101 events. So that's great. But the reason it's an advanced practice is because it's soul gazing with someone's eyes. You're not just seeing them, you're allowing yourself to be seen, and then eventually you're actually just seeing all of the universe and all of divine, and it can be quite an intense practice. You're seeing your own reflection back in someone else. Okay, another practice, the yoni or lingam massage. So that's a non-sexual massage. It's more of a healing massage to release any sexual trauma, tension, shame, even just physical, knots, energetic blockages, that sort of thing. Sacred spot massage is similar. The first few times can be a little bit more intense and less pleasurable, but after a while it can become pleasurable. There's a sacred spot for the men, and there's a sacred spot for women. More advanced practices are breathing techniques with a partner, so face-to-face breathing into the chakras, other sort of breathing exercises. There's one that's really intense where you breathe into each other's mouths and you inhale and exhale each other's breath. You can do sex magic with a partner. Again, it's way more intense, and you want to be both really aligned and actually both thinking about the same goal or statement. And then there's also a really cool meditative practice where you can make love to yourself as yourself in your divine feminine or in your divine masculine. So that's a really fun practice too. And then I just describe here at the very end that there's a few paths of Tantra. There's white Tantra, which is the pure or spiritual Tantra, focused more on subtle practices and the philosophies. This is known as the right-handed path. And there's red Tantra. This is known as the passionate sexual path, where they can sometimes do extreme sexual rites and rituals. This is known as the left-handed Tantra. Traditionally, this would have been done in areas where they would have done what's called pujas, which are basically ceremonies, and they would have these people train for years to do, basically meditative masturbation, work with themselves. They would all be virgins, and then at this certain time, it would usually be on a solstice or full moon or something like that, they would have this puja where all the women would be in the center of the circle, all the men would be in the outside of the circle, and they would have sex for hours and hours and hours, and every man would move to every woman. And this would be a ritual to increase the fertility of the land. And these people would train you basically their whole lives for this one moment. So that was sort of one of the examples of what could happen in red Tantra. They could also be ceremonies where they would go into crypts or graves, and there would be a shaman or a Tantra teacher who would, orchestrate the whole thing, but there would be two beings making love for 7 to 8 to 24 to 48 hours, and everyone in the room or in the crypt or wherever they were would focus their energy on this couple to enhance whatever ceremony or ritual they were working on. So Red Tantra wasn't always about like, oh, let's just have sex and feel good. It was like, we're using sex for some extreme magic here, and we have to practice for years to like have these ceremonies and rituals. Now Red Tantra is a little bit combined with what's called California Tantra, where they have pujas, but it's more about like touchy-feely, let's all just have sex and feel good. So there's that you'll find that anywhere you go, you know, whatever you want you will find. Just know it's all, there's a few different things, you know, it's not all one tantra. So then there's a pink tantra, which sort of combines both the white and the red. This embraces the spiritual and the sexual practices of tantra. But this, in pink tantra, we can enjoy the rituals and the love making and do it for pleasure, not just for the purpose of the ceremony. This is sometimes called as the middle path. And then, not often talked about, there's black tantra, which is similar to black magic. This path is more about, all right, you want to do drugs, you want to take alcohol, you want to murder people, great, but just do it in the line of Tantra. But also sometimes black magic is where the practitioner might be using the energies for harm or personal gain. So my opinion is black magic is not something to mess with. I have had friends who have been attacked by black magic, and it's a serious and real thing. So just like stay away from it. My humble opinion. I work something that's probably more aligned with pink tantra. So, okay, there's so much more to say about tantra. It's really a never-ending journey. It's really everything. It's how you feel about it. It's what you think about life, and it's your own personal path and journey if that aligns with you. So I wish you all a pleasant and easeful path. May we all know peace. May we all be at peace. And so it is. I have 2 books of resources here for you. If you are curious about learning more, Osho has some great books, not just Tantra, the Supreme Understanding, but lots and lots of others. And then if you're interested more in the sexual healing sort of stuff, Sacred Sexual Healing by the Shaman Method of Sex Magic by Kamala Devi and Baba Des Nichols is a pretty good book. And it's good for any level. They give some good introduction sort of practices, and then they give some higher advanced practices. So yeah, any questions? The path of yoga is like the 8-limbed path. I would say Tantra is more everything. That's the way I experience it. Tantra just is. So there's lots of tantrikas that don't do yoga. There's lots of tantrikas that don't even have sexual practices. There's lots of tantrikas that just, you know, meditate. It's really more of an
Yeah. I
yeah.
get it.
What did I say the literal translation was? It's an instrument for expansion, right? So it's just whatever. If you just sit and be and you're feeling all those energies in your body, that's it. That's Tantra. Think about it. Tantra is the one sort of practice or you know, spiritual resonance that I have found and that I have continued to come back to. So that works for me. You know, there's lots of other practices, like there's Taoism and there's Buddhism and there's a bunch of stuff. I didn't speak to this, but there's also like a Taoist Tantra and there's also a Buddhist Tantra. They basically all resonate and they all originate in the same place and they all kind of become the same thing. But there are, you know, different backgrounds in esoterics and you can get way more into it. And what I have found in my journeys is that the chakras were something that many different paths found, but it was always the same, or slightly similar. Um, so I can't say it originated from Tantra, or I don't know where it might have originated the very first time. In terms of like yoga, because yoga also focuses on the chakras. It's just some teachers talk about it and some don't, or some know more about it and some don't. But like from my understanding of how yoga was sort of created or transmuted into physical realm, was that these rishis would go and meditate and feel into their bodies, and basically that's how all of this wisdom came about. There were these hugely spiritual people who would meditate and feel in their bodies, and they would just intuit or know or have these channeled visions about what this stuff was. And like I said, many different people had similar experiences, so that became, you know, the foundation and basis of all of this knowledge. So it's not really one specific tradition that created it. Certain different traditions have different ideas or different symbols, or different, you know, slight different meanings, but it's all very similar from what I've found. Yeah. And something too about Tantra that I didn't speak to was that it was originally an oral tradition. There was nothing written down. It was passed down verbally, and that's still more or less the case. That's why it's hard-ish to find some texts about it, because like Kadara said, they're now translating some stuff, but a lot of it wasn't even recorded. It was shared through stories and parables, and just, you know, even tantra teacher to student, right? It was just given as knowledge. So there is a little bit of a limited searchable um, um, yeah, history or index. But there was this one story that my tantra teacher shared to me about the origination of yoga being different than what most people think, in that there were a bunch of these tantra temples, and I forget what area of the world it was at the time, but it would have been like maybe sort of Middle European or Eastern European, and there were all these tantra temples, and the women were the tantra keepers, so they kept the temples, they guarded them or did the work there. And the king or ruler of that country was at war with another neighboring country, and they made a deal. The king of that country said, okay, come and raid all of the tantra temples, and take all of their, like, they've got lots of gold, take all of their stuff, and then, you know, you can leave our country, and win-win sort of thing. Because they were also, you know, the tantra teachings were becoming very popular, and it was becoming against sort of keeping people in line to that ruler. So that's what happened. They started killing all of these women in the temples, because the women were also being tantrikas. We're like, okay, great, I'm not afraid of death, do what you need to do, like, we're not going to fight you. And then these monks over in, I think it was Nepal or somewhere in Asia, heard about this happening, I don't know how, and they came and they rescued at least a few of the last tantrikas and took them to Asia. And that's when they started scribing some of this, so that they wouldn't lose the whole tradition. And years later, some warriors found the scribes and like, oh my gosh, this is amazing stuff, we want to learn how to do it. And so they asked the tantrikas, and the tantrikas were like, oh, your bodies are so stiff, like you can't do it, like you're not open, you're not feeling the flow. And then they prescribed basically yoga, and they're like, you need to do all this stuff first so that you can then do the other practices. So that's one fun story about how yoga might have started. And for me, yoga has always felt like a very masculine practice, depending on which one you follow. Like Ashtanga is very rigid. It's very, you know, one focus. It's very aggressive, or it can be. that's a very masculine practice. I love, sort of Shakti yoga, which is more like free flow, intuitive, but there's very little of that being taught in the world. Also, we live in a patriarchal society where sort of more masculine and patriarchal forms will thrive better than the feminine. Although ecstatic dance is, budding up there and getting out. So anyway, that's my ramble. Is the typical practice, the breathing in once the other person breathes out. There's also like the ways of like the feminine breathes in through her yoni and out through her heart, and the masculine will breathe in through his heart and then out through his lingam. And so there's that circle of energy that will also happen, or you can come up to the third eye and do it up there. You can reverse the circle too. Like I said, we all have the feminine and masculine energies within us. So yeah, you're doing it. You're feeling it.